we have the wonderful opportunity of speaking with Dr. Howard Book. I have had so much opportunity to truly learn and grow, Howard, as I've listened to you. Thank you for teaching me.
Well, my pleasure. It's
yes.
Great, the discussions we've had together.
It's been good, hasn't it?
It sure
and
has.
Your chapter here in the Handbook for Developing Emotional and Social Intelligence on enhancing EI and associating it with leadership derailment. And I'm going to hand this to you because this chapter, Howard, was just so fabulous, and it really gives people practical tips on what to do. Can you tell us a little bit more of why you chose to write this or what it's about?
Well, I'm always interested in looking at paradoxical entities and opposites. Okay. And so much has been written about the importance of emotional intelligence, and it is important. A lot of literature about that. But I became aware that there are some situations where heightened capacities or heightened capabilities in some of the strengths bring with them a cost. Okay. So when I see enhanced abilities of, say, independence or empathy or optimism, I'm always looking for the other side.
Good.
What's the cost?
Yeah.
What's it cost you to be this empathic? What does it cost you to be so optimistic? Because there usually is a cost. So if that cost goes unnoticed, I think there is always a risk for a leader to become derailed.
Yeah. So can organizations do something about this to respond more effectively?
Well, I think organizations can. I think that with the mindset that there's always a cost-benefit ratio, it can heighten people's awareness of what strengths or how strengths might in some situations work against the individual. But you're touching upon another area too, and that is the infrastructure of the organization itself plays a huge role on how emotional intelligence and its competencies unfold. Right. So if you're a highly intelligent person from an EQ perspective, if you have lots of independence and you're a good communicator and you're empathic and self-aware and reflective, all that can get undone if the organization does not have requisite structures in place. Wow. So if there's not clarity about job description, reporting mechanisms, if there's ambiguity around reporting or role confusion about who am I really responsible to, all of those kinds of things can promote a regression within the organization and within the individual, so that despite innate strengths, these strengths get undone. Wow. So one of the first things that I look at when I go into organizations, I want to make sure that there are clear lines of accountability and responsibility, clarity around role and role description, up and down and sideways, formal lines and informal lines of communication, clarity about job description, resources to support all of these things. Because without that kind of infrastructure, regardless of how emotionally competent people may be, there's a risk that that competency will start to regress, particularly in turbulent times, like we're in.
Like we're in right now, yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So.
What a tragic loss.
It is a tragic loss. It is a tragic loss, and that's why sometimes men or women who have good track records, when it comes to their competencies as far as emotional intelligence goes, fail, because stress will uncover flaws, hairline fractures in their EQ competencies that really don't show under everyday routines, but only under enormous pressure. Or the organization structure, if they move from one organization to another organization, they don't really look closely at the infrastructure to make sure that all of these requirements are in place, they'll also fail.
Yeah. So it's just a loss that doesn't have to happen if they simply get the right structure in the organization.
Right, correct.
And the individual gets the support. So if they do encounter that hairline fracture, they get the support to move beyond it instead of sync with it.
Right, so
Yeah.
that would be the major thing I look at
Yeah.
first. The second is, are people paying a price for being too emotionally competent in certain areas? A guy who's, or a woman who's highly independent, for
Right.
example, that's good. Independence, assertiveness, those are necessary skills. If you're too independent, then you run the risk of not being a good team player.
Right.
You run the risk of not being able to turn to anybody for input, data, information. You feel you have to know it all yourself, and that any reliance on others, appropriate reliance on others, is a weakness. So people have to be aware. Yes, it's a benefit to be enhanced in certain skills. Now let's look and see, what does it cost you?
Yeah. Where do I need to balance this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what I found is skills come in pairs.
Hmm.
So if you're highly optimistic,
Right.
it's helpful to be highly good in your reality testing.
So you're grounded optimism.
That's right. That's an
Yeah.
excellent term, grounded optimism.
Right.
The same thing with empathy. It's important to be to practice what some people have called tough empathy. And what they're referring to is the blending of the capacity to be assertive with the capacity to be empathic.
Right.
The ability to be self-aware is very important too, for obvious reasons. You know, it helps uncover what your blindnesses are, your biases, your prejudices, your scotomas, all of these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
If you're too self-aware, too self-reflective, you may be doing so at the cost of paying attention to your environment and actually implementing or executing the plans. So you have to be able to balance these competencies.
You do. I guess the really self-aware people sometimes become pretty thin-skinned too, is what we've found.
Absolutely,
too, right? Yeah.
absolutely.
So it's a matter of the dance, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's
You
a
know,
dance.
it's quite a dance, bringing it all together. Well, I appreciate your chapter, Dr. Book. I mean, that chapter is so good that everyone who's interested in personal performance or organizational performance should go read it now.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for your contributions.
Thank you too.
Thank you.